Thank you all for joining us today. First of all, I guess we want to thank the Chemo Theater for opening its doors and hosting us today. So let's have a round of applause for them. The staff keeping the lights on and making it very welcome for us today. And we want to thank you all for showing up today because of your interest and our shared interest in prosperity, what that looks like in our city, what that looks like moving forward for future generations. Many of you, like me, have children, and we want to make sure that we've kind of all collaborated on an idea of what that looks like for us, and kind of double down on a promise that began in conversations that started happening over a year ago. I know Mayor Berry talked to me about this initiative for prosperity almost 2 years ago, back when I was still poet laureate back in the day. And since then, there's been a series of conversations had with community leaders, and then that's evolved to this event that we're having today, which will evolve forward throughout the course of this week and a little longer, I believe, in cyberspace, that will give everyone in the community a chance to chime in and help define what prosperity means to you. So this is the beginning of that today. You're gonna get lots of more detail and information about that today, but my first order of business was to welcome you, and I get to bring up a special friend of mine, another poet, who gets to even welcome you artistically and creatively. So I would like to introduce a long-standing championship poet. She's also recognized this year as the Outstanding Young Nonprofit Professional of the Year. Did I get that right, James? Okay. And she's also a program manager. Many of you probably know her or have been touched by her work as a program manager with the Public Allies program out of the New Mexico Forum for Youth and Communities. For the past 5 years, she's been the program manager of that program. And last but certainly not least, she is the international program director for the 2015 Women of the World Poetry Slam, which is coming to Albuquerque in 2015. So do join me in welcoming Jasmine Cuffey to the stage.
Thank you so much, Hakeem. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today to talk a little bit and listen about prosperity here in New Mexico. I'm going to open up with a poem. I've born and raised here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and anytime you talk about prosperity and looking forward into the future for New Mexico's young people, from people's families, I'm always taken back to how I was brought up and where I come from and the things that have influenced me throughout my life. So I'm going to read you a poem. It's called Enchiladas and Cornbread. I hope to get you all hungry this afternoon. I am from 7-day burning candles of San Martin de Porres, from long-drawn drapes and slow-speed ceiling fans, from 2nd Street and Bear Lane, the rural wide roads of Blake and Arenal, where we always prayed for the flash floods to settle the sand. I come from the steady bricks that held up our trailer and the reborn treads of the wheels that drove us out of there. From Hidalgo, where the ghosts breathe through the walls and stalk the stairwells, sharing their stories through moans and drums. Desert Springs, where the yucca stretches towards the east and you can hear the whispers from the mountains' parched throats. From Clearwater, way on the west side, where my husband was baptized in my family's traditions, superstitions, and neuroses, and stayed every time I told him to go. I come from the ancient need to dig and uncover the breathing earth beneath searching feet to find the winding, relentless ocean that whirlpools inside. Born under a fiery moon, but a lightning waiting to rip the horizon from the northern sky. I come from an unflinching, God-fearing woman, never goes to church on Sundays, but will always pray for you because she knows you never have the time. A goddess who's out of breath from laundry, bills, dishes, and grandkids. This house is always a mess. Her unyielding patience. I'm from hand-me-downs and pickup sticks, scraped knees and band-aids, birthday parties and department store Christmas trees. Vengo de un abuelo que habla solamente con mí en español, hasta que aprendo ambas mis idiomas. From grandmothers who haunt my blood and manifest in my dreams, chanting hymns of resurrection. I come from a man who has burlap sacks for hands, blue-collar factory worker, 50 hours a week plus overtime every week. I'm from from enchiladas and cornbread, collard green, Spanish rice, and black-eyed peas, from the brazos of Burque and the slow twang of Tennessee, from under barbed wire and power lines where the arroyos and train tracks meet, where we paint our names immortal for the ones that are next to come, to light the way brilliant and unobstructed to a future of shared vision, abundance, and love. I come from. Thank you so much. And please have a wonderful discussion.
So my job also as your host MC today is also to continue to help prime that pump. So I think you all being here today for this kickoff event is you get to go out and be ambassadors and get people who grew up where you grew up, people who talk and think like you, and people who don't talk and think like you, and inspire them to go fill out these surveys, be part of these community discussions that you're going to hear more about. But these things that Jazz was talking about in her poem, these relationships are part of prosperity. Just sit with that for a second. So I get the pleasure next of bringing up, I think you all know who he is. I could say he's a man that needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him. I get the pleasure of bringing up the mayor of Albuquerque, Mayor Richard J. Berry.
Yeah. Thank you. There's no way I can follow that, Jasmine. I'm such a fan, of poetry and especially the movement in Albuquerque. If you haven't, I know most of you probably have. But if you haven't had an opportunity to go out and see one of these events in our community, you should. It's just, it'll lift your spirits and it'll make you think too. So thank you for your beautiful work today. I'm glad you're here today because we're trying to start a different kind of conversation in the city of Albuquerque. And let me just start off by saying this. Let me start off by telling you a story of prosperity in my life. My grandfather, dirt farmer, rancher in Nebraska, started his family in 1935. My dad was born on a kitchen table in the middle of a dust storm in the middle of the Sand Hill country, Nebraska. And my grandfather had grown up, with families that make a living off the land. And things got pretty tough back in those days. And he actually had a team of matching Morgan horses that he'd pull a blade with, pull a plow with. And they had a tough time making it, so he pulled a plow for the WPA for a while. And one of his neighbors at one point in time got to the point where he couldn't feed his family. And so my grandfather had one milk cow, and he gave it to his neighbor Gilbert so that he could feed his two young daughters. And he did this for decade after decade. My father grew up, was the first in his family to go to college, first in his family probably to even get to graduate from high school. Went on, and my grandfather continued to work his ranch. And he would love to hunt, and he would love to fish. And he had a couple of old tractors that he'd hold together with, baling wire and duct tape half the time. But he got it done. And when he sold his ranch in the early 1970s, because my grandmother had heart trouble, they had to move to town, which is a town of 2,500 people. They had an auction, and on the wall of my office, in the mayor's office, the only original piece that I have in there, the only piece of artwork of any kind that wasn't already there when I showed up, was some photographs of my grandfather and his family with ducks that he had shot and fish that he had caught and deer that they had harvested and hay that they had put up. And when they sold, at the day of the sale, everything that they sold could fit on a place of paper about that big. And he was maybe one of the most prosperous people I've ever known. So when I came to the point in my life where I got a chance to serve in the New Mexico legislature, and I got to go to Santa Fe, and I took my experience as a kid that grew up in the Midwest and came to a big city, and went to school here at UNM. I took my ideas of what prosperity would be like, and I met with other legislators that had their ideas of what prosperity looked like, because at the end of the day, we can question each other's judgment, but our motivations are always the same. We want people to do well. Elected officials, I don't care what party you're from, whatever, people are doing it because they want people to do well. They want people to prosper. But about 2 years into my first term as a mayor, it became really evident to me that if we're going to put forward plans and policies to help people prosper, we better ask people what that looks like for them. because it looks different to everybody. And so much of the policy that gets made, including out the mayor's office and in Washington, D.C., and in the state, at the Roundhouse and others, come from legislators and others' preconceived notion of what prosperity should look like. So prosperity is only going to college, or prosperity is only making $1 million, or prosperity is only living in a mansion, or prosperity is only that. I think we're missing the boat, and we're missing it by a long way. And it's almost, I don't want to use the word arrogance because that's not the right word, but it doesn't get us in touch with the people that we are here as public servants to serve. So a couple of years ago, I asked the Kellogg Foundation, and Kara Carlisle and her group have been wonderful partners for me and my administration. And I said, I would like to start a conversation that I don't know that anybody in the country is having. And that is a really deep conversation in the community about what prosperity looks like, so that we can hear from those that we serve what they think prosperity is about, so that we can then craft solutions around that, not our preconceived notions, or not about our own personal ideas. So we convened a meeting about 1.5 years ago, and I invited everybody that I could think of to the table that had never been across the table from somebody else. So we always have these dialogues about what does the Chamber of Commerce say, what does Voices for Children say, what do activists say, what do business people say, how does this work? So for the first time, we were able to bring people that traditionally weren't sitting down at the table and having this conversation. What are the challenges for prosperity? First of all, what is it? And then what are the challenges? And it was one of the best meetings I think I've had as a mayor. So we're continuing this process, and like lots of things, it goes slower than I'd like in government to get to the point where we're having these conversations. But where we are today is about 2 years into the making, and we really want to talk to our community about what that looks like. And so we need your leadership. We need to have a really candid and open dialogue about this. And it's not about lowering someone's expectations. And it's not, and when I tell you my grandfather was prosperous, people say you're crazy. God, that's not the definition of dirt poor. But he was prosperous. So it's not just about money. But then if they say, well, Mayor, if you just want to take money out of the equation, well, then you're just trying to lower the standard. That's not the point. New Mexico ranks, very low on the scale of child welfare through the Casey, the report that the Casey Foundation puts out each year. But yet other studies show that we're one of the places in the United States that is most proud of where we are and who we are and where we live, and is one of the happiest places in the country. So how do we get to the bottom of what we're trying to do? Yes, we want our children to graduate from high school. We want our children, if they so choose, to go on to college. But when I was in the state legislature, I met with a group of students at Valley High School. And I said, what's it like for you when you're not going to go forward and maybe go on to college? Or what does this look like from a standpoint as a student? What could we do for you as government or educational system that would help you? And they were in a shop class. And the shop teacher let me, talk to the students unabated for like an hour. It went on for like an hour and a half, I think. And what they told me was, we want to learn more. We want trades taught in the schools again. We want to learn so when we graduate from high school, we get our diploma in one hand, but we can actually go to the pipe fitters union, or we could go to the electrical place, or we could go to the automotive place and actually have a start on this. So we started running Start for Careers. We changed the state law to allow industry taught curriculum in the high schools. And people said we'd never get that done, but it got done. And now we have a program that's being nationally touted. Why is that? It's not because I had some great ideas, because we actually listened. And this is what this is about. So from my perspective as a mayor, come back and really help me understand. We know prosperity is going to look different for different people in our community, from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic strata, whatever you want to call it, from the data side. But we want to hear. And I think, and I don't know anybody else in the country really that's doing this right now. And I think it's something where we could really set an example in Albuquerque of asking those deep questions. And the most important of which, when I was asking some of these students and I asked them what prosperity meant to them, they never even thought about it. So that's part of the equation here as well. So I'm really excited about this. I've been trying for a long time to get Hakeem Bellamy to join our administration, and I'm thrilled to have him. Frank Metterball is new to my administration here as well. And I think I have a great team of people put together that can do this outreach that we need to talk about this, so that you could come to the mayor's office. You can always come anyway, but come to the mayor's office with ideas that we can talk to our state legislators and others. We can talk to our congressional delegations about this. And I met with some Pueblo leaders this morning as well, talking about the same kind of conversation. What does this look like for someone from one of the different Pueblos around here, which is probably different than somebody that lives in Tamaline. Okay, so that's too long of a rant, I apologize. But I'm really excited about this opportunity. And I think if we seize this in a way that's meaningful, we could come up with some solutions in Albuquerque that can not only help us statewide, but we can really talk to the nation about and start breaking out some of these pigeonholes and crafting solutions around what people really want. And then dovetail those into the things that we're already doing that we know work, because there's a lot of that as well. So thank you for your leadership, and I'm excited about this prospect of talking about prosperity. And with that, I didn't use any of my talking points. Oh, the last thing I was going to say is that we've all heard about President Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative. So I got invited by the White House to be at the White House for the announcement of My Brother's Keeper. So I was there on that day, and there were a lot of celebrities there, and there were a lot of, Trayvon Martin's parents were there, and Al Sharpton was there, Bill O'Reilly was there. It was just like this whole mix of people in the room. So it tells me that the nation's hungry for this discussion as well. So let's do this, and we'll incorporate this into some of the work. We've signed on as an early adopter with President Obama to work on My Brother's Keeper initiative in Albuquerque. I was there from the beginning. We're going to continue that. It's separate from this, but I think the two go together very well. I think we've got a good head start on it here in Albuquerque. So thank you for engaging with us in this really important dialogue, and I really look forward to having this community conversation over the next few months moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to also thank you for inviting me to be part of this work. Being now part of the city after 4 years of working for the state of New Mexico, I feel like I'm getting back to helping people on a daily basis. Not that poems don't save the world. Poems certainly save the world, but that I can help people with their daily situation. So thank you for that opportunity. And it's a good segue into another artist I'm going to bring to the stage. I feel like we have all these artists on the podium today. Those of you who don't know, the mayor plays a mean guitar. I actually saw it. I saw it at the mayor's charity gala last year. But the next gentleman I get to bring up is also a musician, but that's not why he's coming here today. He's coming here today as the Director of Collective Impact for the city of Albuquerque. And he's going to tell you a little bit more of the how. So the mayor came up and told you why the city is trying to get to this destination of prosperity. Frank's going to give you a little bit more of the how. We're going to try to get all of us involved and everybody we know involved to get there. But the destination still lies with you. What that looks like, when we arrive at prosperity, is going to be the result of what's happening this week and moving forward. So to talk more about that, I'd like to bring up Dr. Frank Mirava.
Thank you, Akeem. I feel like every time that I'm at a podium, it reminds me of my youth when I used to just dream about being at the Grammys. So, being a musician. So I'd like to thank the Academy for this award. No, Frank, you haven't won anything. So I'm here to give a little bit more detail about what this process is going to look like. So a lot of folks have asked me, plan for prosperity. What does that really mean? How do I best characterize this? And so I use the term quite often, open source government. So really open source government is about democracy. It's about the person like myself that grew up on South 2nd Street that has a voice in the policies that the city forwards, in the programs that exist. And so it gives the average person, the average citizen, the opportunity to weigh in on what their city looks like. And so at the end of the day, you want your average citizens to say, hey, when I see the policies that the city's forwarding, when I see some of the programs that are being advanced, I see my input in that. And so it's a direct reflection of that input. So that's really, in spirit, what we're trying to achieve here. Really is collective problem solving and getting people from diverse backgrounds together to have a dialogue. So there's 3 phases to this work, and I'll try not to get too wonky in describing it. So is Everett's here, right? Everett Hill? So we partnered with social innovation strategies in this work, and when Everett and I began this discussion about what it should look like, one of the things that I shared with him is my own frustration of being a part of numerous community dialogues over the years. And I was like, Everett, I've been involved in all of these community conversations. I've even shared it with Ian on different occasions. I've been part of all of these community conversations, but whatever happened with that data? whatever happened with some of these action items that were forwarded? And he was like, you know what, I have the same frustration. So what we built into the design of this project was what we're calling a meta-analysis. And really what that means is we looked at several community-led dialogues, everything from education to healthcare to economic development. And what were some of their findings? You know, what did the citizens tell them in terms of what does prosperity look like in a robust educational system? And so part of that meta-analysis informed the survey that I'll talk about a little bit later here. So this meta-analysis has already been completed, and there was dozens of community dialogues that we analyzed as part of that process. The second is around data collection. So these community conversations that are happening all over the city. So right now we have 30 plus community conversations that are happening, and they're really small and intimate in nature. So we're talking anywhere from 10 to 20 people. So we can have a really rich discussion on what prosperity looks like. The second piece is this community survey that we've developed. And so we came up with these categories in this community survey based on this meta-analysis that we did. Based on the input of folks that worked on the Indicators Progress Commission, that worked as part of some of the dialogues around the Unidos project, Mission Graduate. What did we learn from those dialogues and what strategies have been lifted up? And so that's also informed this particular instrument. And then, so we're going through this data collection process right now. We're calling it Prosperity Week. And really what it is just a full push to get citizen input around prosperity. That's happening throughout the week. We're using community centers. We have private businesses that have come on board and said, hey, you know, I want to host a conversation with my employees. We have the University of New Mexico that's working with young men of color to have a dialogue around prosperity. So it's really just kind of a broad stroke, citizen-led participatory process to get that type of data. And so some of you may be asking, so what does this lead to? So we get this data and what's going to come of it? So we're going to be creating what we're calling a prosperity index. So we're looking at a number of different categories that the citizens define, the way they define prosperity and what those indicators should look like. We have a data team at the University of New Mexico that's going to take all of this raw data and come up with some common themes. Once those common themes emerge from the data, we're going to lift up some particular strategies that we want to track over time and really create this, for lack of a better term, a scorecard. So if the citizens define prosperity this way, and these are the actions that we need to take, this is how we're going to measure our progress over the next 10, 15 years around these prosperity indicators. So that's pretty much the end result. In terms of how people can get involved in this process, we have created a unique website. It's prosperity.cabq.gov. So again, prosperity.cabq.gov. On this website, you'll be able to find a community conversation near you. So we are leveraging our city infrastructure. So we're having a number of these conversations at our community centers. And so you can sign up for one of these community conversations. They're happening in English and in Spanish, and the survey's also in English and in Spanish. So we want to be as inclusive as possible. So again, prosperity.cabq.gov for more information. In terms of getting the word out, we encourage you to tweet this out, use social media. We're using hashtag P4PABQ. So we're going to keep this conversation going. The other thing is we have 30 plus conversations already scheduled, and the survey will go live now at about 3:30. If anybody in this room is interested in hosting the conversation this week and you haven't had the opportunity to chime in on that, please see myself or Everett Hill right after this press conference, and we'll see if we can accommodate. We want to get as much citizen participation in this process as possible. We want folks, and so Jasmine and I have a shared narrative. We both come from South 2nd Street, from the Kinney Brick area. And so we share stories often of what it was like growing up in the Kinney Brick area. And so we want the folks in Kinney Brick, the people in Barelas, the people in North Albuquerque Acres, all to weigh in on what prosperity should look like for our city. And we want to be responsive in this process. And so when I say, once again, when I say open source government, I don't mean just big data. We're going to create an app for that. I mean around civic engagement. Students, families, community members, faith leaders should all have a voice in what prosperity looks like in our city, and we should be responsive to that voice. And so it's around creating policies, programs, but there's also going to be a call to action for citizens. If, as a common citizen, prosperity looks like this to you, then these are the things that you can do as a common citizen to ensure that we're getting close to that vision. So that's all I have. Once again, prosperity.cabq.gov. Everything that you need to know about these community conversations, taking the community survey will all be there. And so thank you for having me, and hopefully I'll get that Grammy someday.
Thank you, Dr. Mirabal. I want to take a moment before we close here to acknowledge those people who served on the advisory council. So those conversations have been happening for a year or so now. If you're in the room, just stand up and be acknowledged, please. There we go. I saw a hand. I saw a couple hands. And now, if you are actually on the planning team for this event that's been working with Everett and Frank, and you've been meeting furiously over the past few weeks, stand up or raise your hand and let yourselves be known. There was a lot of hard work that went into getting us here today, so thank you. So you kind of have your marching orders now, right? Well, we really appreciate the turnout here today. I don't want to undress us from the stage, but we ran out of agendas, which is a good problem to have. That means that there are people that are really concerned with the future of prosperity in this city, but there's more work to do. We have to spread the word. As Frank said, please speak with him or Everett if you're interested in hosting one of these conversations. And just to close, I would like to say that, there's an idea called prosperity consciousness that I've been reading about, and some of you know what that is. If you're new agey poets like me, you're into this idea that you can think and focus and concentrate on prosperity, and I certainly believe in all that. And it's nice to have that vision, but what's even better than having that vision is having a plan. So I think what's cool about this particular initiative is that we get to define where we want to go, and then we get to make a concrete plan that holds all of us accountable to whether we get there and how much progress we make towards that goal in the next 10 to 15 years. So I encourage you to do that, #P4P ABQ, and we thank you all for coming out today.